I want to thank everyone for joining the webinar. This is Heather Creven from WasteCap, Nebraska, and we are going to go ahead and get started. This is our second webinar in the Community Roadmap series to Zero Waste. WasteCap, Nebraska has 4 webinars related to businesses and 4 webinars related to communities in 2016. The United States Zero Waste Business Council will be presenting for the business webinars and EcoCycle for the community webinars. For a complete listing of remaining topics, please visit our website at www.wastecapne.org and look under the events section on our homepage. All of these webinars are funded by a grant from the Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality. WasteCap Nebraska is a statewide, member-based nonprofit that works with community and business leaders to build zero waste communities. Our mission is to eliminate waste in Nebraska through innovation, education, and policy change. In this webinar, you will learn how to bring a convenient, cost-effective curbside recycling program to your community, including a recycling bin at every home, school, business, event, and government building as the foundation of a zero waste community. We'll tackle the nuts and bolts of curbside recycling and discuss solutions to help you overcome the obstacles to starting or expanding programs for single and multi-family homes. In addition, you will hear from the Recycling Partnership, which is a national nonprofit with 2 goals: to increase access to curbside recycling and improve the quality of material collected, whether it's curbside or drop-off. Kate Bailey is the Program Manager for EcoCycle Solutions. Kate is a leading authority on zero waste best practices and focuses on the facts, numbers, details, and logistics that help zero waste initiatives succeed. Over the past decade, she has created national reports, websites, webinars, and tools to empower local communities to implement zero waste solutions. Project Director Karen Banhauer will share resources and data from cities across the United States who have recently made the transition to carts. She will also discuss the Partnership's grant program to help communities make that change. The webinar will wrap up with proven approaches to increase material quality at the curb, with highlights from pilots currently underway in communities across Massachusetts, offering a sneak peek into comprehensive material quality resources that will be available nationally at the end of the year. During the webinar, please type your questions into the chat box as they come to mind, and there will be a question and answer session at the end. A recording of this presentation will be available afterwards on our website in our archives at www.wastecapne.org. Thank you again for attending this webinar, and as I turn the presentation over to Kate Bailey, there will be a slight delay before she begins.
Great, thanks Heather. Excited to have everyone join us this morning, and we've got a great show for you on curbside recycling, so let's go ahead and jump in. Got a brief overview for you of where we're going to go today. We're going to jump into what I call universal recycling. We'll of course get into what that is, a little bit on why it matters, some policy options around curbside recycling, how to bring it to your community, some of the current market challenges we're facing, and then Karen's got some best practices and research that she'll follow up with after me. So let's keep rolling. Wanted to start at the beginning. I know it's Wednesday, so it's not Throwback Thursday, but I wanted to give you a little bit on who EcoCycle is. And so I dug some of these photos out of our archives. EcoCycle is based in Boulder, Colorado. We were one of the first 20 communities in the U.S. with curbside recycling, and this is how we got started. It was honestly pretty rinky-dink. It was volunteers. We collected newspaper from communities and neighborhoods around Boulder, and we used old school buses to haul that around. We took the seats out, packed in as many volunteers and as much newspaper as we could, and we did that for many, many years. I was back in the mid-70s, so this year we're celebrating our 40th birthday, and what we have grown into is one of the largest nonprofit recyclers in the world. We still do a lot of that recycling collection. This time we have a fancy fleet of trucks servicing mostly the business community. And we now not only collect materials, but we also market and process them. So we run the Boulder County Recycling Center, which is our County Materials Recovery Facility, or MRF. So we've got a good, stronghold understanding of what it takes to build and run the infrastructure you need for recycling. We process more than 50,000 tons a year through that facility. And of course, as a nonprofit, our base has always been in education and volunteer engagement, so we continue to be out in the schools, out in the community, really promoting recycling and zero waste to our community and really trying to move the world forward. And in those 40 years, we have grown and we've learned a lot, and so our latest project has been to start to share those stories and those experiences with the rest of the world. And so we have been fortunate to be able to work in the past decade everywhere from Nebraska to Nepal and help share our experiences and help communities move forward with their recycling programs. So I wanted to start off today's webinar with a vision. So when we talk about curbside recycling, where is it that we want to go? And to me, the vision is the opportunity to recycle for everyone every day. No matter where you are in the community, if you're at home, if you're at work, if you live in an apartment, if you're at school, or if you're anywhere in between on the go, you should have the opportunity to have convenient curbside recycling available to you in all spots. So really making your recycling service not only convenient, but also consistent throughout the community, and really giving everyone an opportunity to participate. And that's really what we like to call universal recycling. You find it universally throughout your community, and everyone has the opportunity to participate. And when I talk about opportunity, I'm purposely using that word because I'm not talking about programs that require you to participate. Mandatory recycling programs, those are often called. I'm talking about first setting up a system where there is a recycling bin next to every trash can, so everyone can choose whether or not they partake in the program. And what we find is when you make it convenient, consistent, people are willing to participate and happy to participate. Now we talked about home, school, business, government, lots of different places where you can put into place your recycling program. And that can be a lot to take on. So when we talk about universal recycling, we also talk about it as a phased approach. So maybe you want to get started with bringing recycling to your school. Maybe you already have it in your homes, and maybe you want to roll it out to your businesses. Or maybe you want to do the whole kit and caboodle at once. There's really no path forward that says you can't do one or the other. It's really up to you and what works best for your community. We're going to focus today on mostly households and apartments because that's mostly where communities are at, and because we also have another part of this series which is focused on businesses, so we're going to leave that to them. So we're going to focus mainly on your homes and apartments, but a lot of this information will be useful across the community. Now I know a lot of you already know why we recycle. And so I just want to touch briefly on that, mostly because I want to talk about why now. So there's a lot of things going on in all of our communities, and all of our elected officials and our city staff are busy with lots of different projects. Maybe they're working on a sewer line expansion, maybe we're doing something with our power company, or we're looking at new parks, or we're trying to solve our homeless problem. There's always so much going on. And one of our jobs is to be able to sell recycling as a solution that needs attention now. So not just why should we be talking about recycling, people generally support that recycling is important, but why is it important that our community work on it now? And I want to pull in 4 reasons why that is important and touch on those very briefly. And I also want to keep in mind that why as we move forward, because the why is what drives us. So the motivation to why we're doing this recycling, why we're going through this curbside recycling program. It's important to keep these values and principles in mind, because as we get into the weeds of making it happen, sometimes things can get a little frustrating, and we think, God, why am I doing this? And we need to come back to the why. And I'm going to start first with the economics because I don't think this gets enough credit. Recycling is already making a real, substantial, and documented difference to the economic picture in Nebraska. There are more than 1,600 recycling jobs. You can see more than 10 million in state and local taxes paid by the recycling reuse industry. There are serious economic impacts, positive economic impacts to recycling in Nebraska, and this is with a not great recycling rate. So there's so much more that positive economic benefit that can happen from really investing in the recycling infrastructure and convenient programs throughout the state. We are also literally throwing money in the trash. So when we choose to throw away cardboard, magazines, plastic containers, those materials have real value that they could have been sold on the market to make new products. When we look at how much is being thrown away in Nebraska every year, it has a market value of $86 million. So we're not talking about pocket change here. We're talking about, again, real money that can make a real economic impact across the state in your local community and create green jobs. We also talk about recycling as being fiscally responsible. You have a landfill. If you're a city, you've invested quite a deal of money in your local landfill. Or maybe you've got a contract with a private company and you're always trying to get the best deal for your residents. It is fiscally responsible for you to manage that asset and extend its life as long as possible. A, from an economic point of view, and B, from a political point of view, because I can tell you across the country there is no elected official who wants the job of siting a new landfill. It is a lose-lose proposition. This is a group of residents fighting a new landfill out in Texas. There are residents across the country fighting new landfills, so it is a political nightmare to try to build a new landfill. So it makes political and fiscal sense for you to extend the life of your existing landfill as long as possible. And curbside recycling is a huge part of that solution. So Lisa Jackson is the former EPA, head of the EPA, and she was on the Dr. Oz show a couple years ago. And they were talking about things you can do for the environment. And as Dr. Oz wrapped up, he said, "What's the #1 thing people can do?" And without hesitating, Lisa Jackson said, "We need to do a better job at recycling." She talked about it being a proven solution, something we know how to do a better job of across the country today. And I love how she framed it as a homegrown jobs program, an environmental solution, an energy program, and a water program all in one. That is why recycling is such a great win for the environment. It helps us on climate change, it protects public health, it reduces pollution, and it has the economic benefits that we talked about so far. So again, this is why it's important, not that you just work on it in your community in general, but why we're working on it now. And lastly, I'll say that people want it. I hear consistently from communities across the country that one of the #1 things they get feedback on from their residents is about their recycling program. Residents want to talk about, how can we add this? How can we make this better? And one of the reasons for this is because this is one of the programs that your residents interact with every single day, if not multiple times a day. So in many ways, it's an interface between you as a government or the community and your people at large. It's a way that they use your programs and your services, and you are represented to them. So people want it. We see consistently in surveys, Americans believe recycling is important, that more people should be recycling. So what's holding us back? Well, when we look at these survey results from Nebraska households, we find that people they're not recycling because they don't have access to curbside recycling, or it's too hard to take materials to the drop-off center. So there are real barriers. Community doesn't even offer recycling. This is, of course, why we're talking about curbside recycling today. How do we overcome these barriers? So what we learn from these surveys is that convenience is king. This is why curbside recycling works is because we make it so convenient for people. We put the bin right at their front door and people participate. Drop-off centers are great, but again, there's some barriers to, how do I get there? What if my bins are full? And we consistently see curbside programs outperforming drop-off centers simply because they are so convenient. And this plays into, again, making that recycling program consistent and convenient across everywhere in your community. So not just at your homes and apartments, but your businesses, your school, your government. Don't make people look for it. Put it right there when they need it, right next to that trash can. We also find that success breeds success. So we are a social species. We pay attention to what the people around us are doing, and we change our behavior. So if everyone on your street is putting out their recycling bin on collection day, we find that people put out their recycling bin just because that's what the neighbors are doing. We're finding that people react that way. It's good peer pressure in a sense. And I often think about it as we've learned to use seatbelts. We've accepted things like not smoking indoors. Sort of the evolution of our culture over the last 40, 50 years. Recycling has become a social norm. And the more people recycle, the more people are brought on board. And I also want to briefly mention this in the light of an equity issue or social justice. We focus a lot on recycling for single-family homes because it's frankly an easier program than rolling out to apartments. Apartment recycling has some challenges, but it's important that we provide equal services to all residents of our community. Just because I live in an apartment doesn't make me a second-class citizen, and I shouldn't have second-class recycling services. I should have the same consistent and convenient services that I would get if I lived in a single-family home. So it's really important to include your apartment residents along with any of your single-family home programs to make it an even program throughout your community. One of the things we've learned about recycling in the last 40 years is the free market is not delivering the things that we want. This is why we're talking about bringing curbside recycling to our communities, is because it's not something that's happened on its own. What happens in most of the country, particularly in the middle of the country where we are, is you have what's called a private subscription service. So most residents contract on their own with a trash hauler, and they are free to add recycling if they want, but it usually means they have to call and find a company that does it and then subscribe to service, and usually costs more. And we find this model has a very low participation rate. Really, only your die-hard recyclers go out of their way to find that company to sign up for that service. And a lot of well-meaning people maybe just don't get around to it, or they aren't willing to pay a little bit more for it. So the private subscription service just is not delivering that convenient, universal recycling that we want in our communities. We also know that the free market is not giving us an equal or an accurate pricing on what's really happening. We know that there are unaccounted for costs in our trash. The health risks from the air pollutants and the groundwater contamination from our trash is roughly it has been estimated at about $10 per ton. We also know that there are future costs to managing our landfills once they're closed and may potentially leak into groundwater in the future. And those millions of dollars often fall onto communities years after landfills have closed. And as we talked about earlier, there are public benefits to recycling in terms of the climate benefits, reduced pollution, the energy savings, and those benefits have been estimated at up to $120 per ton. We're also seeing the jobs, and of course, people are happy with recycling. So a lot of these factors come into play, and this is why what we find when the free market doesn't deliver, we need government to get involved. And that's what we're talking about today. How do we get involved with bringing curbside recycling to our community? I'm going to touch on 3 basic ways that happens. I'm going to start first with city services. This one's pretty simple. So if you run a fleet of trucks and collect trash from your residents or your businesses, then curbside recycling means you offer recycling services as well. You purchase recycling carts, you provide them to everyone in your community, and it's automatically part of the package. You don't get trash without also getting recycling. We don't see a lot of city-run trash programs in this part of the country. We see this primarily in the Northeast. But it's always an option. And it's always an option, especially if you have a trash hauler who's not willing to offer recycling services. If you even explore the option of a city providing services, it's interesting to find how quickly that trash hauler may change their tune and be happy to provide services. The last thing that they want is for the city to get involved in the trash hauling business. So even though you may not do this, always keep this card in your pocket in case you need to use that as a threat. So a brief success story on city-run trucks. As I mentioned, a lot of these municipal-run services are based in the Northeast. So this is a small community that was able to save more than $40,000 a year when they rolled out recycling. That was money that they saved from bringing those materials to the landfill, and also money they were able to make selling those materials on the market. They provide those services to both apartments and homes, and one of the reasons I like the Danvers example is they made a simple deal with residents. If you don't put out your recycling bin, we're not going to pick up your trash. So it's a great way for them to incentivize people to participate in the program. They didn't have to go out and flip lids and see if people were participating. They just made it simple. We want you to have both bins out of the curb every week. And this is a package deal program, recycling and trash. What we see more commonly here in the middle part of the country is a city contract. What this means is the city puts out a contract with a trash and recycling company, or maybe multiple companies, to service the entire community. So you're talking about the city contracting on behalf of residents to provide trash and recycling services. Many cities have been doing this for decades. And so in a lot of cases, it's just a matter of amending your contract. It's a matter of saying, okay, now we want a convenient curbside recycling program for every resident in our city. And what we find is that when you're able to roll out recycling across the board, across all households, there's a lot of economies of scale, and it becomes much more cost effective for your trash hauler to provide service if they're picking up at every door instead of every fifth door, or 3 houses on this block and 4 houses on this block. They like being able to count on recycling from every single household. And you as a city, as with other city contracts, get to define the terms of services. This is really no different than how we work with some of our utilities. So maybe you're contracting with Comcast to provide internet and cable services to your community, or to a power company to provide electricity. So this is kind of like a managed utility model. Great success story right here in Nebraska. The small town of Murray, sort of between Lincoln and Omaha, had a contract for trash collection for all its residents. And when the contract came due, Murray said, well, let's renegotiate this. Let's look at what if we moved away from our drop-off center and started offering curbside recycling to all of our residents. What would that cost? Is there a hauler who could do that? They were able to negotiate a deal that brought their cost down from $17 a household to $12 a household. So not only did costs go down, but residents got better services, and now that they all had curbside recycling. This is a great story about just, talking to your hauler and renegotiating your contract and seeing what will work. The third option, which is another common option that we see in the middle part of the country, is what's called a municipal ordinance. One of the problems with the contract system that I just mentioned is that you typically only work with 1, maybe 2 or 3 haulers across the community. But what we see in a lot of places, especially in the bigger communities in the middle of the country, is that there are 5, 10 haulers providing trash and recycling services throughout the community. So there's a lot of free market competition, which is good. And residents really value, or businesses really value, being able to choose their own hauler. They really like that freedom of choice. So what a municipal ordinance does is allows you to maintain all those different trash and recycling companies and that freedom of choice, but it sets the terms of service again. So it basically says that any hauler who is providing trash service is also going to provide recycling services. And so it's often done through a licensing. So many cities license their trash haulers for safety reasons, and as part of your hauler license, it says in order to meet the qualifications of this license, you must also provide recycling. So this gets to our goal of having a recycling bin next to every trash bin across the community. This is a well-used approach for businesses because there is a lot of competition in hauling in the business community and also a little bit for apartments, but it certainly also works for households as well. And we see it working quite well out here in Aspen, where they have it for homes, businesses, and apartments. It's again part of their licensing. In order for a hauler to get a license, they must provide recycling service. It must be included with the base cost of trash, so there's no additional cost. And everyone in the community has a convenient access to that program. So how do we make it happen? I've talked a lot about policy, but it's not just government that makes this happen. We really believe this comes down to what we call an inside-outside partnership. Your inside is your government staff. Maybe it's an elected official, maybe it's a staff member, maybe it's your public works. You need someone in government to champion this. But it can't just be government. You really need the citizen support. You really need community engagement, and maybe this is a nonprofit, maybe this is a citizen group, maybe this is just a couple passionate individuals. But what we find is that the community supports recycling, but we need people to stand up there and say that they do. When you show up to City Hall to talk about a recycling policy, and there are 30 people in green shirts standing there behind you saying, yes, we want recycling, that speaks volumes to your elected officials and tells them this is the right decision, this is the way my community wants to move forward. So if there's some, you get stuck in the weeds or the details, you need to have this citizen engagement in order to push through that, to remember, why are we doing this? Why is this important to our community? You, of course, also need the infrastructure, and quick shout out to Nebraska DEQ for putting together this great map on the equipment, infrastructure, and services already existing in Nebraska. So this will help you figure out how you build partnerships, how you can collaborate on marketing materials, and who are your closest markets. And of course, whenever we talk about infrastructure, we come to the question of single-stream recycling, and does it make sense? I don't think it makes sense necessarily for Nebraska. I think it can work, and it does work, and I think dual stream can and does work as well. So it really is something that you need to evaluate on your own in your own community. It is not a done deal that you need to move to single stream. It definitely comes with its challenges, and it comes with its benefits as well. And of course, we're facing some of those challenges right now with recycling prices being pretty low. There's a lot of factors outside of our control contributing to that. Low oil prices makes it harder for us to sell recycled plastics. There's a strong US dollar, so all of our exports are hurting, and we are to some extent an export industry. We've become too reliant on exporting and not built up our local markets. We're also seeing material streams changing. So we're seeing less newspaper as people move to things online, but then we're also seeing more cardboard as we order more things online. Places like Amazon shipping in cardboard boxes. And as we've moved to single stream, we're seeing more contamination as we've not invested in the education. But what I want to emphasize is that this is a cycle. Recycling has struggled with bad markets before, will struggle with bad markets again. I've heard people say that they have dressed for recycling's funeral a number of times. They've been through this, oh my God, how can this be? And it's bounced back. Recycling is not going anywhere. We are here to stay, and we just need to ride out this storm. And a couple of things to help us do this. It's good business practice for us to plan for the bad years, not the good years, and save money when the good years happen to help us ride out the bad pricing. It is also helpful when we evaluate our costs over a 20 to 30 years time frame. including, are we going to have to build a new landfill, and how many millions of dollars is that going to cost? And I mentioned earlier the full cost accounting, looking at those health and pollution costs from landfills, and then the benefits to our community and our environment from recycling. I have to say that in Colorado, I'm a little jealous of the great pot of funding you guys have to increase recycling programs. It's frankly a lot more than we have, and it's great to see. And so I highly recommend that you check out these resources to help you grow, expand, or start your program, and tap WasteCap for some information on it as well. And lastly, we are here to help. All of those options that I talked about earlier, the contracting, the municipal ordinances, city-run trucks. I've got a map of communities across the country who have done this. I can give you best practices, RFPs, resources to help you get started, how to talk to your elected officials about it, connect you with all sorts of resources. You can find all of this on our website, ecocyclesolutionsHub.org. And lastly, I just want to say we'll be back again in 2 months. So come August, we're going to be talking about Community Education 101 to go along with these better curbside recycling programs that you're going to be rolling out. So hope you stay with us then and stay with us for the rest of this day. I'm going to kick it over to Karen, who's going to walk through some of the best practices and some great data on communities making the change to curbside and really investing in their curbside recycling programs. So thanks for having me, and Heather, I'll kick it back to you to change it over to Karen.
Okay, thanks so much. Really appreciate that, Kate and Heather. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Fantastic, great. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Karen Bantower, as mentioned, and I work for the Recycling Partnership. Just a real quick introduction. Who are we and why are we here? We're a national recycling nonprofit. And we exist because recycling, it really is a hub in the circular economy, and it's a loosely connected but highly dependent system. So what does that mean? It means that, as Kate was saying and referencing, free market interventions haven't worked to a large extent in recycling because there are disconnects between the different entities that you see in these bubbles around here. The market signals don't necessarily feed back. When there's increased demand, for instance, for recyclable materials, community programs don't necessarily hear those. When there's lower demand, they don't hear those signals. And so each of these players, while they're highly dependent on the other one working and working well, they're not very well connected. And so we exist on a national level to help knit those pieces back together to some degree through best practices. And so we work really hard to develop and implement best practices across the country, recognizing every program is unique, but there's certain best practices that are consistent and beneficial across the country. So as I mentioned, we're a nonprofit. Some of you might be familiar with our name, our former name, Curbside Value Partnership. We're now the Recycling Partnership. We've expanded beyond primarily education focus to also include operations and to provide grants as well. We work across the United States, and we also host national technical networks and councils. So we have a technical council of recycling experts that we brainstorm with, bounce best practice ideas off of, help us develop consistency in terms and ideas. We run a MRF group. We have a state leaders group. And then we just really, as much as possible, try to create peer-to-peer networks between our community partners as well. And as mentioned in the introduction, we really focus heavily on both quality and quantity. So we're looking both for the more recycling as well as the better recycling. And just a quick thank you to our funders. They represent folks across the supply chain that have a keen interest in keeping material out of landfills and back into productive reuse in end markets across the United States. So I'm going to start by focusing on access, really building access from a curbside perspective, residential curbside. That's our primary focus for the access component. of the work that we do. On the quality side, I'll talk a little bit about the drop-off component as well. So as was previously mentioned, absolutely, we promote the idea that every home that has should have the same level of service for both garbage and recycling. So there should be automatic recycling provision if you have garbage collection. And there's a lot of good reasons to back that up, as Kate was mentioning. I won't go into the list that she talked about, but just wanted to flag this report that came out of Michigan. Michigan, similar perhaps to Nebraska, has a lot of subscription-based services. And what they found was that the average participation rate with subscription service was about 15%. And so again, these are the folks that are diehard recyclers. They're going to do whatever they can to recycle, and they were calling and getting that service. But when automatic access was provided, participation rates were upwards of close to 70%. So just by the very nature of having access to recycling, we see that huge increase in participation in the program, and that gap between the 15% and the 67% really represents that portion of the population that will recycle if it's convenient, if it's consistent, if it's easy to do, but they're not necessarily going to make that extra step to secure the service on their own. So for us around access, we have a very strong focus around carts. So moving programs into recycling carts or starting programs in carts. So this could be moving from a bin-based collection system or a bag-based system or no curbside service at all. And there's several reasons for that. One is really focused on the increased recovery component. And so what we see and what we find is that when programs have carts and they have strong education and outreach and other best practices, they're typically recovering between 400 and 450 pounds per household per year. And that's, that number, that metric, is across all households in the community. So if you take all of your households and you divide your tonnage by it, convert it to pounds, we're typically seeing between 400 and 450 pounds per household. It's just not really possible to get that amount of material diverted when you have a smaller collection container. The container becomes the bottleneck, overflow material ends up in the garbage cart. And so carts are just by far and away the simplest way to really increase the amount of material that gets diverted. From a resident standpoint, carts are a significant benefit because of the convenience. They cut down on litter, you're not having material blowing around, you're keeping material dry. So from a material quality perspective, preventing that material from getting wet. Of course, it holds more recyclables, and it's a lot easier for use. Now, it says here on this slide, all in one container, no need to sort at home. We have worked with communities that are dual stream and have implemented carts. So Emmett County, Michigan, currently, they just, I think it's this week or next week, are rolling out carts through their dual stream program. So they're going to maintain carts for their fiber stream, or they're going to add carts for their fiber stream, and then they're going to maintain a bin-based system for their containers. And so that's an example of it being utilized in dual stream as well. And then from a local government perspective, there's this cost-saving aspect that is important as well. And this is something that you're going to see a lot more, of course, if it's a single-stream type program, because you're able to move to automation. And with automation comes a lot of operational benefits. One of the pieces that we talk about, though, when we think about providing automatic access to curbside recycling, is that also feeds into the cost savings component as well. And so in thinking about the benefits of moving into every home receiving a recycling cart, it has to factor in as well on the budget side of things, where if you have more participation, you can have denser routes, trucks are getting fuller faster, they're not having to drive as far to fill up, you have more efficient routing, all of those things. Those have a lot of cost savings. But just converting over to carts and then moving into automation, you're really able to decrease your disposal costs. You have a smaller collection staff, you're getting people off the streets. Automation and compaction means more efficient routes. You can move to biweekly collection versus weekly when you have more capacity. So one of the best practices we promote is moving to biweekly collection if you have a 96-gallon or 95-gallon cart gives you that flexibility. And then decreased workers' compensation claims, and this can be a very significant number, especially in larger communities. It's really when guys are getting off and on a truck and they're bending and lifting and twisting, the program is really at the expense of their knees and backs, and so moving to automation has significant benefits there. So we have a few different ways that we help communities move into recycling carts. One is through our request for proposals that we put out annually. So we just wrapped up our 2016 RFP. We're going through the selection process right now for that. We provide $7 per household for carts and $1 per household for education and outreach. It's capped at $550,000. We also provide technical assistance throughout the life of the grant. So we're not just solely a granting agency. We really partner with our communities. We help devise disability service policies and come up with timelines and milestones, have draft RFPs, help connect with cart companies and others. So we really do provide full service. We also have a designer that designs education materials to support the cart rollout. So you see an example on your screen of the 1990s called campaign, and we customize these for the communities and then provide the art files. Another opportunity that we have available for communities is through the CARTS campaign that I just mentioned. So here's an example of another campaign we have called We're on a Roll or Let's Roll. And we have these two very professionally designed campaigns available really for any community. So if you're a community that's moving into CARTS, say you're not using any of our grant funding, you're more than welcome. And in fact, we would absolutely love it if you used our educational materials to help support the rollout. So these are professionally designed resources. They're really easy to modify. They have best practices around them, so suggestions on use, and I'll get into that a little bit more. But it really makes it very easy for a resident to know what's happening, what to expect, how to use their cart, and really get a program off on the right foot. And here's just a quick example of one of the projects that we completed recently, just to give you an idea. Greenville, South Carolina, they just launched their program, Carts Rolled Out, the first week of June. We provided them with a grant, and they're providing 17,000 households with recycling carts, technical assistance, and education and outreach. And so what we're projecting is really their recycling rate to grow over 100% with the 115% change as they go from about 209 pounds per household to we assume over 350 pounds per household. And the reason why that number is a little lower than the 450 that I mentioned before is because they're pulling glass out of their program currently, and so we adjust it with the loss of the weight of the glass, and that's due to not having a market to send it to, not anything to do with their program or the grant, but just the loss of a processor that is willing to take curbside glass. And so we do this for all of our communities. We calculate these benefits, and Kate touched on these as well. You know, this is really, it's not just about the materials diverted, it's about water, energy, greenhouse gases, and economic value as well. In Greenville, they're very fortunate to have a lot of local end markets, so a lot of their material stays locally. And so this really does translate into regional economic value for them. So moving into quality, we have a more better program. So many communities, whether they're moving to carts or not, as was mentioned previously, they're struggling with material quality right now with reduced value around commodities, recyclable commodities. We can no longer kind of hide the sins of poor recycling behavior with the higher prices that were received for materials. There's a lot more scrutiny on the materials that's coming through. And so many communities are being contacted by their processors about the quality of materials that are being sent to them, and those who aren't yet likely will. And so we really wanted to develop some ready-to-use resources for communities to tackle this issue, and we wanted to test them and ground it in data so we'd be able to say, yes, if you implement this program, you can anticipate measurable results and improve material quality at the curb. So this is really for us about the integration of education and operations. It's important to have high quality education material, but it really needs to be grounded in some operational implementation of operational tactics that provide direct feedback to residents at the point of the activity, which is at the curb. What we really want to see here is both increased quality and increased quantity. And so one of the first things that we need to think about is the education component and making sure that that's right. There can be a tendency sometimes to just want to tell everyone everything all the time. And there's a danger in that when you tell people too much, they don't really hear anything, and then the message gets lost. And so we always recommend doing an assessment of existing educational resources and making sure that they follow this hierarchy. So if you have 1 minute to tell, or I'm sorry, 1 second to tell someone something, that's really an awareness message. That might be bus ads or billboards or something that people are just seeing really quickly, and then that's just a quick information or informational piece, like recycle, for more information. That might be it. If you have 5 seconds to tell people something, make sure you really focus on the critical pieces of information that you want them to retain. So this might be a postcard, magnet, a label on a cart, some advertisements, and really here you want to focus on the very simplified, clean categories of yes and no, and really focusing the no on those critical materials that are highly problematic at the MRF. So not telling them every no, but what are the 3 to 5 no's that if they changed would be a huge significant improvement for your program. And then the next level is when you have about a minute to tell someone something, that's when you can go into more detail. So this will typically be a website or an annual recycling guide. And so using this hierarchy to kind of screen your materials and making sure that you're hitting the right information at the right level is just a useful kind of first step in making sure that people clearly understand how to participate in the program. So what is the program for quality? It's focused on lifestyle. It's a modular program that we're building right now, and so we call it More Better. It's really less about the act of recycling and more about vibrancy, lifestyle, community. It's taking its cues from modern advertising. You're selling the sizzle, you're not necessarily selling the steak in the way that you advertise, and so it's very clear, that you have the recycling symbol around the recyclable material, but you're seeing it used in everyday life. You're not seeing someone necessarily put it into a recycling cart, and so it's building that, like, this is part of my life, it's part of what I do, it's who I am, I want to feel good about it, and so I recycle. And then from there, developing the pieces. So we structured this in a way that hopefully makes it simple to really target and prioritize spending, and making sure that the right elements are in place to really promote a solid program. So we call it 3-2-1. It starts with the three key pieces. So clear information on what can and can't be recycled. I just mentioned that. And there's an example of an info card there. Personalized feedback. So feedback to residents at the curb of what they can and can't recycle through an oops tag or a reminder tag. And then issue-specific campaign pieces. So if you have a problem with plastic bags, for instance, having a piece that really identifies and drills into that issue. The second piece of the 3-2-1 sorry about that. It looked like my audio connection had been lost for a second. But general awareness advertising, really reinforcing recycling as a lifestyle, using at least 2 forms of media and making sure at least one reaches every resident. So this might be billboards, in-store signage, posters in parks and coffee shops, things like that. And then the one, so the thing that always needs to happen, which is a consumer service type support, making sure that everything is consistent and lines up, and this would typically be like a website or an annual guide. And then the operational piece. So remember the Venn diagram of education and operations. The really critical piece is to work with your MRF operator, and we have a resource to help you do that available on our website, to really make sure that you have a clear yes and no list, and as I mentioned, and then using that to develop both the info card as well as the oops tags. So here's just a quick example in action, and then I'll wrap up. We're currently testing this approach in Massachusetts. Here's some examples. So from the 3, you see their info card. There is a large Cambodian population there, and so we have some translations that we worked with a local community group to develop. Personalized feedback, so you see examples of the oops tags and the reminder as well as the thank you tag, and then issue-specific campaign pieces as well. So that second level of general advertising, there's signage up in the test routes. There's store advertising that's up. You see that on the right-hand side. And then we have an updated piece that's on their website as well to make sure that everything matches and is consistent. So people are seeing the same thing no matter whether they're driving down the street and they see a sign, or they're going on the website to find additional information, or they're receiving a tag on their cart. And so with this, that's the education piece. On the operations side, there are people looking in the pilot routes every collection period. They're tagging and rejecting carts that are highly contaminated. They're banking carts that are doing a good job. And then in the next collection cycle, they're going back and rechecking to see if the problem's been fixed. And they're leaving thank yous if it has been. And what we see is really impressive improvements over time. And so just in the last 2 collection cycles, for instance, we've had an 86% fixed rate from the previous week. We've also been measuring participation, and what we see is that it's holding steady. So cart rejection isn't deterring the recycling behavior, but it is changing it for the better. We've done a pre-recovery rate study, and we'll do a post-study next month, and that'll give us kind of final data around both recovery rates and contamination rates for each of the different categories of material that we're testing, and then we'll have some final data around these studies. So that's all I have for today. I really want to encourage everyone to please visit our website, recyclingpartnership.org. We have a tools section that has a lot of great resources on it, as well as a place where you can sign up for our newsletter, and we provide lots of tidbits, shareables, really actionable items that people can take and use in their own program.
Thanks, Karen. I want to thank again Kate and Karen both for taking their time to present this webinar today. I do have some questions. So the first one is, in terms of a best practice, do you suggest bi-weekly, in which collect recycling one week and then trash the following week, or are you indicating weekly trash and bi-weekly recycling?
So this is Karen. I had mentioned going down to biweekly. So recycle. What we typically suggest is trash stays weekly, and then you have the option with a large cart to go every other week. But if the cart is a 64-gallon for recycling, we never suggest going to every other week. Always staying weekly. Weekly is more convenient, but from an operational standpoint, there are cost savings associated with every other week. There are some program examples of trash collection that's moved to every other week when you have the inclusion of organics collection and recycling collection, but that is those pieces would really need to be in place in order to consider that approach. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Kate.
Yeah, I'll just chime in. We definitely agree. You need the 95-gallon recycling cart, that big recycling cart, if you're going to go to a bi-weekly system. We hear a lot of people complain if they are on bi-weekly and they have a much smaller cart that they still fill up the cart too quickly. So definitely you need the large cart, and agree with the operational savings. I will also say that we work with a lot of communities that have recycling one week and yard waste collection, or even yard and food waste collection the other week. So I know in Nebraska you have a ban on yard waste in your landfills, so many of you have drop-off programs, but some of you may also have some curbside pickups, particularly in the summer. So alternating that yard waste and recycling pickup can be kind of the best balance of convenience and cost for either the city or the trash hauler.
And then Karen, my next question is for you. For the recycling partnership grants, can a nonprofit apply for and or receive a grant for recycling, or are the grants only for municipalities?
The grants are only for municipalities, so the municipality would have to be the contracted entity that would receive the funding. However, we strongly encourage collaborative relationships and would be more than happy to explore opportunities. We definitely work with communities that work with their states and nonprofits and other private entities to kind of make the whole package come together. And so feel free to get in touch with me if you want to talk about that more.
And then I have another question, and it is, you didn't take a position on single stream versus dual stream, but can you talk about glass recycling? Should it be included in curbside recycling? I hear a lot of communities are landfilling the glass from the recycling programs.
That is a great question. Karen mentioned the community in South Carolina struggling with their glass. We're seeing definitely glass has been a consistent issue for communities for a while now. Just it's heavy to transport, so really needing to have a local processor in place to recycle that glass. And with the move to single stream, we're finding a lot more contamination in the glass, and then glass also contaminating other materials. So we're seeing a variety of things. We're seeing some communities have a recycling cart and then a bin for glass at the curb. We see that in Portland. We see some communities taking recycling or glass out of their recycling and having a glass-only drop-off center. We see communities sticking with it and investing in better glass processing. And the challenge really is finding your local market and what will they accept and how do you meet their specifications. One of the great things we're seeing right now in Denver, we have consistently had problems finding glass processors, and some of that glass has been used as landfill cover over the last several years. But what we're seeing now is two companies have just invested in new facilities in the Denver area to clean up the glass and resell it to, there are existing markets and there are strong markets. It's just a matter of meeting their quality specs and being able to handle the transportation. So Clear Intentions and Momentum Recycling are the two companies investing in glass recycling. I know they're also in Salt Lake City, so I think great conversation could be had with them about maybe expanding a little further east into the Omaha-Lincoln area as well.
My next question is, how does it work to contract for recycling services, and what if my trash company doesn't want to provide the service?
So cities contract for things all the time. So I mentioned you might contract for your internet, you might contract for your power, kind of like you manage your utility. And so the process from the city perspective is usually starts with an RFP, a request for proposal. And we like to say you're not really making a commitment, you're just kind of going fishing. And you're looking to see what is available in my area, what are my haulers willing to offer, and what's the best price I can get, and then maybe you'll attract some new haulers into the area by saying, you know, we want curbside recycling. And so the process usually starts with an RFP. Some haulers do struggle with recycling. It's new to them, and to be honest, there is really good money in trash. So trash is a $50 billion industry across the country. So don't let your trash company fool you. They are making a good pile of money, and they typically don't want to move away from that. And so that is often their hesitation to move into recycling. And so part of that contract process is finding a system that works for them. As I mentioned, there's great economies of scale when they pick up at every household instead of having to just pick up at select households. So that is a great way to make it work for them. And in some of the smaller communities, you know, really educating your hauler and bringing in some other trash and recycling company representatives who have made this work in other communities, and kind of helping them understand their costs and how to invest in new carts, and finding creative solutions like recycling partnership to maybe, you know, get a grant to bring in some of those carts. And so your hauler can be an obstacle, but that's also why we need our citizen engagement to push it through. We can't just let the private interests of the hauler be the thing that determines whether or not we get curbside recycling throughout our community. So it really needs to be looked at from the benefit of the entire community.
Again, Kate and Karen, I want to thank you both for your time and your information. I believe we have reached the end of our allotted time for our webinar. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to email them to us. Otherwise, thank you.
Thank you.